Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's up, dude?
And on the 6, we got TJ.
Hello.
And finally joining us today, this is the second time we got Benny, the founder of TRAC and TAP Protocol. Thank you for joining us, Benny.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Don't forget Pipe, dude.
And Pipe. Yeah.
You can't forget Pipe.
Pipe is coming up again.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear more about Pipe. But yeah, man, how long ago was the first interview? I want to say
it was like over a year ago.
Yeah, it's amazing how quick time flies. So much has been done and achieved in that like year, essentially time leap.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's almost impossible to kind of like go through all that like in this discussion, right?
I think we have to try.
Okay, then where should we begin? Like the very origins, you think?
Yeah, I mean, so Benny, when we found you, it was because we started to understand the value of indexing on top of Bitcoin, because we were builders on Ethereum, and we were like, all the infrastructure was there when we were trying to build, so we didn't have to like think too much about like the infrastructure pieces. But on Bitcoin it was completely different, and so when we found TRAC, we were like, okay, this is definitely needed, and let's try to get this guy on the podcast. And finally, you came and you showed us the light, and ever since then, we've been in full support and with everything that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of the latest TAP protocol updates that you've done with Taproot Swap and the bridging, and just kind of take us through the launch of your token as well, and let's just get into the details of this stuff.
First foremost, was quite successful, but you can imagine pretty intense last couple of weeks we had. So there are actually like multiple releases at once, and we're still not done yet. So what we have released so far was of course the token finally, which everyone was looking forward to. We had that TDE.
Yeah.
Just 3 weeks, I believe, or almost 3 weeks ago. Then in the meanwhile, we released classic PSBT marketplace. We released in Tap to Ethereum and Backbridge, as well as Taproot Swap, and are eagerly awaiting now for now hopefully final review of our wallet at the Google Chrome store. Yeah.
Nice.
And there is more to come on top of that, right? So you can imagine this is something that not many are doing. Usually what happens is you release, you have a TGE or TDE, and then a few months down the line, there is some development going on. There is a product, but we are literally like dropping products out one by one, like as we planned, simply because we also aside from the fact that we are already like indexing TAP protocol through the TRAC network and things like that, need to provide the foundation basically for the actual ecosystem that we're building.
Right.
Yeah? And this is part of the ecosystem. It's not just us. It's actually TAP builders, for example, Tapalytics. Yeah. There's Launchpunks. There's a lot more. You can look that up on tap-protocol.com. There's the current builders, they're listed there, and it's getting more and more, right? So, but still, you need to have a foundation for people to attach on. Yeah, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, by the way, on the TAP protocol website, you didn't list mScribe as part of the marketplaces. Just letting you know.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
You should look again.
I need to look that up. But Block Runner is for sure there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't
So yeah, you did put mScribe in. Oh, I think you put mScribe on like the homepage, but on the search for marketplaces, I didn't find it. So
yeah, let me fix that. I wasn't aware of that. Sorry.
Well, that's the only reason why we're interviewing you, to correct that.
That was it.
All right.
Exactly.
We can end it here.
Yeah. But yeah,
consider that's done. I will be fixed. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, that's not a big deal. And part of it is, I want to commend you because you're probably one of the more busiest people in Bitcoin, if not the busiest person.
Yeah. And
you still have time to jump on a call with me to talk about, this little old DMT thing that we got going on. So I don't know how you figure out like your time allocation, but I just want to, share my thanks for just like being able to kind of talk about all this other stuff that, we kind of need your support on as well.
Yeah. And I think that's a good segue into like, I guess, peering into like what is going on in your mind as far as like what ultimately, because, you're building out an entire ecosystem stack here, but, what do you foresee actually like the outcome of that becoming right now that things are actually starting to align and, activate, come online and such? What was the initial motivation, from the very beginning to where you are now? Because I'm sure it was much more difficult to kind of understand how things can be executed way back in like the early BRC20 days, because there was literally no other infrastructure out there. Did you know right away like what needed to be built, or is it just like a process of let's build one thing and then we discover new problems and let's just like iterate on top of that? Just kind of go through like your process.
Yeah, in the beginning, you probably have a rough idea what is actually needed, and these rough ideas then they develop into actual projects, or products that you believe see fit. Yeah, for example, what the swap, for example, solves is that you don't need to trade fixed packages anymore. Yeah, especially when it comes to these meta protocol and even runes, style style trading. Yeah. Plus it solves, for example, liquidity. Yeah. So you always have a liquidity kind of issue. Yeah. In classic PSPT markets and partially even in these emerging Bitcoin dexes that are in the end order book, literally like order book marketplaces, and you're trying to solve problems. Yeah. And the more problems there are, especially when you're a developer, you're trying to basically put them together into categories. Yeah. So in what category are we in that we want to solve problems? So we have the DeFi aspect. Okay. All right. So for DeFi, one of the primitives is actually automated market making. Yeah. That you need, right? So, but then coming from a space that's yet very small, you want that the users, and especially the projects of your ecosystem, are able to reach out to users of other communities, of other chains. Yeah? And that's why you want to provide something like a bridge, right? That is capable, to get these products attention. Yeah. So we did reflect that, for example, in that TAP Ethereum bridge. Yeah. Which is not only tied to tap the token in specific, but literally any token from the protocol can bridge into ETH and back. Yeah? And then there will be a second bridge that then introduces also stable coins from Ethereum onto TAP. That's super important. That makes even the PSPT marketplaces more interesting, right? So imagine you have a way to trade actual tokens for tokens. Yeah. So because there is wrapped ETH. Yeah. So you're not reliant anymore so much on Bitcoin itself, which is actually, depending on the use case, in certain areas, an advantage. It gets a lot easier to construct, especially for the different protocols. Easier to construct transactions for that if you are trading within the token standards, yeah, which is then in this case TAP. Yeah, so just then wrapped ETH. Yeah, and the foresight. I don't really see it as foresight, but the urge to contribute. That's where it emerged from.
I see.
The urge to contribute into something that I believe has more value, not just in monetary terms, but also in
interest.
Not in interest, in the spirit, yeah, of things. Coming originally from an NFT journey that I had before, which started out pretty well in terms of, with NFTs, you can prove this, you can prove that, like proof of ownership, classic, right? Or tickets. And what it turned in the end was just some endless machine that printed, I don't want to be disrespectful, printed useless art, in the end, with all these derivatives, and it turned into something completely different. And with Bitcoin, Bitcoin stayed true to this day to what it actually is. And the contribution here is that I want to contribute in a way that you can still like do all these things like DeFi, right? And all this stuff, and still stay true to the spirit of Bitcoin. I know it's hard to do because, of course, DeFi is DeFi. It's in the end, it's about money. It's about tokens that are not Bitcoin. But I believe that a lot of the aspects of Bitcoin bleed into what you're doing when you're operating with or on Bitcoin. And the contribution is to show, hey, it can be done. You can do that directly on Bitcoin or with Bitcoin. You don't need to take any shortcuts into, let's call it black holes, to I don't know, chains that are popping up that are just made for that whatever purpose, but not really staying in the spirit of Bitcoin, right? And like you like to say, the invisible hand then decides, what if that's something that's that's what people need. But it nevertheless, it's a contribution, And there are multiple projects that contribute in a similar way. There are multiple projects that do not contribute in a similar way, and we will see which one will be basically selected by the invisible hand. But that's how I see it.
I mean, I think your interpretation of like your specific interest in Bitcoin and just trying to contribute, I think it mimics what everyone else's interest is in Bitcoin as well, is that it's the first chain, and if you could do all this stuff like DeFi and all that stuff, it is worth doing because it's Bitcoin. And so, I mean, you just happen to have like the technical skills to contribute in a very specific and powerful way with an indexer. But then what you did was really enable a degree of early programmability in the context of, something like DMT, right? That's not a trivial effort because now you're talking about accessing, this immutable data layer in a completely unique kind of way. So I think what is bringing people to Bitcoin is essentially what got you to kind of build and build infrastructure on top of Bitcoin. And the fact that you could do it is just even more interesting because of now you have like Taproot swap and you have bridging mechanisms now. And this is all new stuff to Bitcoin that we haven't really seen before. So talk to me before you like got exposed to ICP. I'm curious, like how did you even discover ICP in the context of you being able to leverage the ICP network to manipulate, let's say, the UTXOs of Bitcoin? Like, how did you come to that discovery?
The discovery came actually after I prepared the protocol for being able to to allow it to embed itself into whatever system that allows it for. It's probably not so easy to understand if you're not a developer, right? But when you're an engineer or when you're a software developer in general, you do not like to reinvent things, and you want you want that your software also runs on many platforms as possible. Think of apps that you develop once, code once, and they run everywhere on Android, Apple, who knows what, right? And I started with that mindset for the TAP protocol before I was actually looking up what we actually got there, what system is out there, that supports that. The simplest system you can think of that supports that is something centralized. So you're running literally like your own scripts on your own server, right? Sign these inscriptions, release them, and it's done, right? So you program basically on these, but that's actually not what you want, right? So, and I From time to time, was because I very often have had Bob Bodily in my timeline, Twitter timeline.
Same.
And then I decided to look into ICP a little bit further, and I was like thinking, oh my God, this is something really, really interesting, right? Because of its Bitcoin integration. And I didn't have that much time to look into it, but I memorized it, right? And when I did the actual selection for the first technology to use that works best with TAP protocol, to make a decision, right? And ICP went then on the pretty high on the list. And then, of course, what you're doing is you're writing prototypes. You see how things are working out. And then I did the final decision to start with ICP. The perception of ICP for me is like, as a developer, it's a tool to get the thing done. And it's also the perception of ICP itself. They see themselves as a multi-purpose tool, right? And as a developer, you want to have multi-purpose tools. Doesn't mean that that this is an ICP project. Yeah, it just means that ICP is one of the solutions of the multiple solutions out there that you can use, in the same way, for the TAP protocol. So that's basically how that came to be, and then it was actually concrete work, right? So you start to develop, you learn the quirks, and the advantages and disadvantages, how to deal with that. It's literally like R&D at some point, Then you turn it into a product, and that's literally what happened. There are, of course, other chains that are suitable. Cardano, Aptos, that's what we're looking at. And this write once, run anywhere kind of thing is probably a route that we might be taking, in the future.
Oh, that's interesting. So write anywhere and essentially affect UTXOs on Bitcoin.
In the end, yes. So that would mean that you run, I don't know, let's say a swap on Cardano, that deals with TAP protocol assets, the settlement then would definitely happen on Bitcoin, So just an example. Would work slightly different from ICP because it has internally different mechanics. The Bitcoin wouldn't be, for Cardano, Bitcoin wouldn't be, for example, the network token. That would be Cardano itself. Same for Aptos. But the result would in the end be that you are controlling from there directly what's happening on Bitcoin.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I think you saw what we saw in terms of like Bob Bodily also using ICP, and at the time, I mean, we didn't really look into it, but as soon as you mentioned it, we were like, wait a minute, I guess there is like a lot of there's where there's smoke, there's a fire, right? And so we were like, okay, we need to look into it now. And as soon as we did, and you kind of like pointed us in the right direction, we essentially could foresee like what you could do with this. And so ultimately, kind of like an example of leveraging ICP is Taproot Swap. Is that correct?
Yeah, Taproot Swap is an automated market maker, and this is literal automation. So what happens there with the TAP protocol and Bitcoin in specific is that that you really automate what's happening on Bitcoin. We got literally everyone, myself included, got pretty much conditioned in the past that you need roll-ups, that you need bridges, that you need this and that and L2s, to do something meaningful. I'm not saying fast, I'm saying meaningful, right? And I never bought that. That's what that story is. So I almost fell for it, but I never really was comfortable with it. And when I explored that, I realized, you can do something meaningful and actually do automated market making. And with actual automated market making means there's literally, let's call it a decentralized bot that operates a Bitcoin wallet. Because that's in the end what it is, right? It's like you're when you're sitting yourself in front of your PC and you're operating your Sparrow wallet, let's say, right, and you're dealing with your individual UTXOs and send that to somewhere, would you consider yourself working with an L2 at that given time?
Right. No.
You wouldn't. You're clearly operating on L1. That's what it does. That's why, and for other reasons, of course, why it's a real automated market maker that operates on Bitcoin 1. Layer Bitcoin 1, and everything that happens on Bitcoin layer 1. And that's the exciting part. It's like it's a contribution that adds to all these mix of different solutions that we have, right? Roll-ups, L2s.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So there is a new breed. Here it is. We show it's working. It works. You can use that. You have a pool of the pool of not of opportunities, but a pool of tools that you can choose from.
Yeah.
Bigger. Yeah. So that's the contribution that I was talking about that I would have liked to add, and which we did in the end, right? It's not the end, but there's more stuff like this, that we're adding, that just helps probably to think a little bit more out of the box than we got used to in that space.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear, because you mentioned your origins of NFTs, and obviously you have experience understanding, Ordinals kind of introduced all of us to like the idea, the notion of building out like an ecosystem for developers on Bitcoin and such. But yeah, like let's go back in time, I guess, to a little bit of like our origins as like collaborators, right? Leveraging, because we saw pretty quickly the value in TAP, right? What you were building, because with DMT, we understood that we can't just have like a static ecosystem that has no ability to extend any kind of like function and additional usability, I guess.
Yeah.
And you're the only one who is really addressing this in the entire ecosystem, because we spent a lot of time just, observing everything and understanding where the innovations are going to emerge from, right? So as a result, the perfect collaboration, I guess, like the conditions were just right for us to kind of like, essentially build out like this sub protocol within like the TAP protocol itself. So yeah, I guess a good thing to kind of like kickstart this conversation, because you mentioned earlier about one of your main drivers is maintaining this ethos of the spirit of Bitcoin, right? And we feel like DMT introduces a lot of like that touches on exactly that, right? Like doing a lot of the same things that we've done already, like in Web3's past, like creating non-fungible assets or fungible assets. But these in this case, in this specific sub protocol, there is a direct association to the spirit of Bitcoin itself, at almost like a molecular level, right? So
thermodynamic level.
Well, my biology, physics, whatever, dude. Yeah. You could label it like that. So give us because I don't think anybody's really heard your full, I guess, interpretation of like, because we know there's a lot of work that went into supporting this entire thing. So if you can just kind of like run down, the origins of whenever we first introduced it, what was your reaction to that? Do you think this also fits in line with that strengthening the spirit of Bitcoin ethos?
Yeah, even if I'm not talking much in public about it, I'm a big fan of DMT. Otherwise, I wouldn't have like listened to literally you, right? To help on that. We just talked about the automation part, right? And what is most intriguing for me is, and that's my thesis, that with DMT, you can basically show that at least for certain aspects, you don't need no programmability, because Bitcoin delivers that for you. All you need to do is to pick the right patterns, right? And that's what DMT does. Aside from art attached, aside from assets, just if you like look at all these at all these things, right? This is the pre-computational approach. Yeah, so you can pre-compute results basically and use these results to then settle something. And this is reflected, or the first or the origins of that idea are reflected by DMT. Yeah, this goes even further than DMT. Yeah, so if DMT is probably the following the thermodynamics, yeah, the rules of thermodynamics, then the result of this pre-computation is basically pre-computation is then basically the actual quantum mechanics realm of all this, like it's like a few orders of magnitude, like deeper.
Yeah.
That's something that I looked at very intensely for promises which are not released yet. But before going too far in that area, the thing with DMT is that it enables us also to do things like getting along, not just with Bitcoins in terms of, okay, Bitcoin created that stuff, but what about what it creates continuously into the future? What we're going to do with that?
That's right.
So, for example, now that, for example, the MTNet, is running its path, right? It had its block out, right? Since a few months, it's running its path. You literally see that the same bot, it's like minting, the current block all the time, right? And you're thinking like, okay, who's winning here?
Yeah.
Like who's actually winning here? Like who deserves that actually? Yeah, to get that, the bot or somebody else, right? So, and the thinking is, and we talked also about that, what I love about DMT is that it literally gave us, and I'm talking about you and me, right? The idea that we still, of course, need to explore to instead of rewarding like a bot to mint that one each block, to reward the miner who won that block, right? And that would then go perfectly in line with Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And that's really something. If you think this further, how DMT works, and the how it also evolves over time, the most logical thing to be next, to allow DMT assets to be rewarded to actual miners.
Yeah. So for anyone listening who hasn't heard about DMT or doesn't know what DMT is, there is a 100-second video developed by the TRAC ecosystem that explains it in 100 seconds perfectly what DMT is. So I'm going to link that in the description. But yeah, we've been talking for a number of weeks about, how do we mitigate this bot? And does it make sense that, this bot is just extracting all the NAT tokens? And we were sort of thinking about ways to absolve that, right? And so one of the ways that to us made sense, and you sort of like confirmed it from a technical perspective, is that it makes sense that the miner ends up winning. Anytime the miner wins a block of Bitcoin, which is the subsidy of Bitcoin, they also win that block's NAT tokens. And so what this does is, first, the NAT token is going to live on past our lives, right? And that NAT token is going to live on, most interestingly, past the subsidy, right? Past 2140. So in theory, what that means is that past that subsidy, not only are miners relying on the fees of Bitcoin transactions, which, by the way, right now, Bitcoin is being pitched as the digital gold. And what do you do with gold is you buy and hold it. And so when you buy and hold an asset, there is no velocity of that asset and therefore no transaction fees to be gained. And so there's a sort of paradox developing here, right? And so what we thought is like, well, what if we sent the NAT token to the winner of that block, and then that could sustain development, at least contribute to the sustainment of the security of Bitcoin.
Just as an additional subsidy, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, I love this idea. I've heard you guys talking about this for the last several weeks, and I think it aligns perfectly, I guess, with because the nature of DMT is completely dependent on Bitcoin and ensuring that the substrate layer is sustainable indefinitely, right? Because we're leveraging it for the construction of the metaverse specifically, right? So this is an actual existence layer.
Yeah.
If we're underpinning all the value in the creation within the metaverse, that's non-arbitrary to Bitcoin. part of that like maintainment is ensuring like the security of the network itself is never disrupted, right? Because that the entire value premise of DMT is that an immutable, unbreakable, as close to physics layer that we've created in digital space that can be applied, to a metaverse construct, right? So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I want to add one more like technical thing to this as well. As let's assume we're past 2140 and there's no more subsidy associated with mining Bitcoin. The one interesting thing about NAT token is that it's pointing to the bits field, and so that is directly the result of the security of Bitcoin. So the more secure Bitcoin gets, the smaller the bits fields gets, and so that means that as the security of Bitcoin goes up, the amount of new NAT tokens introduced into the economy is less. And so there's an inverse relationship with that. So that means that there is a direct relationship of contributing to the security of Bitcoin so that the NAT token supply decreases as security increases.
Right.
And so now we're talking about this built-in property, as I like to explain it, that Bitcoin has that we're leveraging in the NAT token that can actually support miners for the Bitcoin ecosystem. So Benny, I guess like what needs to happen to the NAT token specifically to facilitate now, instead of a bot getting the NAT token, now the miners who win the Bitcoin block get the NAT token?
Yeah, and in the case of NAT, it's pretty easy. It would literally mean that when some decision is being made, of course, there might be discussion with the community beforehand, to discuss the feasibility of things, right? But it's relatively simple to achieve, and then it really depends then on what block activation height that would happen. But from a fairness point of view, I would really like to have that done as quick as possible, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is a big deal, and I think from the perspective of like the NAT token itself, it's just more aligned with Bitcoin. And we've had, when the NAT token blocked out in 7 days, right? It represented the community onboarding event. And then now, after the community is onboarded, it makes sense that this is like a subsidy token to Bitcoin, and this would be like the first token that does this, that does this for Bitcoin miners, right? I haven't seen anything like it.
I haven't either.
No, I mean, no, maybe there is, who knows? But to my knowledge, there isn't yet, right? But I'm pretty sure there will be after this video goes public, right?
So, yeah. We've been thinking about like the classification of this, right? Like minor subsidy tokens. I don't know. I'm sure, like you're saying, this isn't just like applicable to one token. This is, I think, a valuable initiative that can be replicated, right? And of course, a lot of these tokens, I'm sure, will fail in their mission to contribute to Bitcoin by adding a new subsidy asset for the miners, but others will not, right? And therefore, strengthening the security of the network overall. Because right now, the prevailing sentiment is like that's the value proposition of the entire Bitcoin ecosystem that we're all kind of like contributing toward, right? Because if we can build more fun things to do, more killer DeFi apps, et cetera, fee environment is sustained indefinitely, right? That's the ethos. But yeah, we can add another layer of contribution beyond that, like that's direct to the miners, right?
So that brings up another question for you, Benny. So now that we're thinking about directing the NAT tokens to the miners, do you think that this is going to be a feature that deployer of DMT tokens can select to direct assets to the miners, and how are you thinking that would work?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this actually quite intensely. I would say if something like this happens, we should see how that is actually received by the case of NAT. It makes sense because everything started with DMT NAT.
Yeah.
So it makes sense also to be DMT NAT at the forefront when you do such things. When it comes to to other DMT assets. If you allow an arbitrary amount of these assets, let's say, to attach to such mechanics, you need to see that the indexer or indexers, right, that actually run that. I'm pointing right now at the indexers that will like prove the results, right? The validators, right? They need to be affected too much by that in terms of performance, right? Yeah. So, and the trick here is then basically, or not the trick, the task here is basically to make sure that this is going to happen for an arbitrary going to happen well for an arbitrary amount of DMT assets, and that is what needs to be explored, yeah, to make that as efficient as possible, because it's like, you could imagine it like, Bitcoin suddenly supports hundreds of assets being mined per block, different asset types, hundreds of times, right? Potentially. And I have to see how or what strategy can be used for that. But it's definitely a goal then, if that works out well, is perceived, there is demand for it, to integrate that. Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense, because from our perspective,
speaking of fairness, right? So if you allow that for DMT net, at some point you want to allow that also for other assets.
Exactly. Yeah? That's what I was going to say. Is like we see a value proposition here for sending the NAT tokens to the miners now, but there's another deployer out there either today or in the future that's going to see value in doing the same thing for their particular token, that could be completely independent, like, of what we can think of today, right? And so it makes sense to kind of enable it as a feature. But I do agree with you, is like we got to take one step forward, and that first step would be the NAT token, and see what happens from there. So the NAT token has been kind of like, on a rebound at the moment. And I think, this narrative here of like the subsidy token is going to be a strong one, especially for something like the NAT token. But I want to talk more about the other aspects of like Bitcoin properties. And so for right now, we have 3 different fields of Bitcoin being indexed. It's the bits field, it's the block height, and then it's the nonce field. So do you want to like explain a little bit about the effort in terms of like indexing these different fields of Bitcoin, and like how non-trivial it is to kind of support this from the context of like deploying tokens from these data points?
Yeah, the data points that are supported right now, they're relatively simple to support from an indexing point of view. The king class, so to say, of DMT indexing is basically the transaction hashes. You have frequently between 3,000, 5,000 different transaction hashes per block. Yeah. And given that the patterns that you are allowed, or you will be allowed to select, from those can be horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, right? So there are pattern matching mechanisms for that, that support that. But it's when it comes to the runtime of this, it's non-trivial, right? Yeah. It's trivial on a case-by-case basis, but going through all this in for each individual, let's say a mint, for example, it's non-trivial at some point anymore, right? So that's just an exponential. You have basically an exponential computational growth there, right? So the trick there is to make that at least linear, right? So, and there are different approaches like pattern caching, right, and stuff like that. That could remove the exponential part there, right? And that is actually the let's call it the final boss, I would say, for DMT indexing, and once this is covered, and I believe that the transaction hashes are actually one of the most attractive things to come for DMT moving forward. Yeah, to when it comes to finding patterns, it's probably like there exists some interesting archaeological site, but you cannot access it yet. That's the situation where we are right now, right?
Yeah.
But once this site is open, yeah, for archaeologists, yeah, to discover, then we're on, yeah. So we're something like in between there. So I'm not 100% sure where the most demand is right now from these fields, but I would like to do, because I like to do the harder things first, usually. Do that as the next one, yeah, because that's if you cover this, then the rest is like easy push-ups, so but that's the things that we need to solve there.
100%. Yeah, I've always looked forward to that, because I think that was the first kind of our own tinkering around. We came up with like a term, bit informatics, right? And we were leveraging the transaction data fields just to kind of like identify those patterns ourselves.
Yeah.
To kind of get a grip on
proof of concept.
Yeah, kind of get a grip on the introduction of this new like human activity, right? It's like peering into data fields and lining them up into like a series, which Bitcoin already kind of like packages that for you for the transaction information. And like you're saying, you were the one who kind of came up with the idea of you can not just read these patterns like from like a horizontal perspective. You could read them, through multiple lines, horizontally, right? Which is like, you injected a whole different interpretation.
This is the real matrix.
Yeah, which kind of like was the point, right? Is like people are, you yourself figured out like it's your own unique pattern discovery, like you're saying. It is a whole field of archaeology that is untapped, like which. As ironic as that is.
Yeah, I mean, tell them about what Vitalik said, dude.
Which part?
When he emailed us?
Yeah. But just I think Vitalik. So we went through the token 2049
gauntlet.
Of different presentations and such, and people are getting to and it's actually a question I'd like to ask you as well. People are asking like Vitalik, here we are, 15 years of Bitcoin, 10 years or so of Ethereum. We're not like in like everybody we're early to crypto stage anymore. It's more like that is behind us now, but now people are starting to the demand or the curiosity is more centered around when are we going to actually identify like killer use cases and applications and such, right? So his thesis around this is blockchain being more leveraged as a form of digital hardness, right? Is what he kind of labeled it as
digital concrete, he said.
Yeah, it's like but without applying like the same notions of DMT, but still understanding and deriving like it's the indestructible properties of blockchain is what makes like, future value derivations that much more notable, right? And in our case, leveraging the substrate of Bitcoin takes that to a whole new degree. And then the end game purpose of all this, he classifies that as the construction of digital castles, right?
That's right, yeah.
So
he actually sang a song in the middle of that speech.
Well, apparently there's like a movie or an anime or something.
Yeah,
like
Studio Ghibli.
Or
Ghibli.
Yeah, so we heard that and we're like kind of like dumbfounded in a sense that I think people are slowly starting to align with what our internal thesis has been all along, is like all this stuff we've been kind of constructing in Web3 feels like it's aligned to head us towards this like overall metaverse endgame vision, right? That's what's always been in the back of our heads. All these individual primitives, all this stuff makes sense in aggregation to support an actual digital existence layer, right? That these are these digital castles that he's describing.
Right.
So I'm curious for yourself, right? The same question, right? Here you are, you've introduced a whole new suite of like protocol tools, features, a sustainable ecosystem pathway for developers on Bitcoin. What are we to do with it? Like, what is the actual like end game vision application for all this?
Yeah. So my university thesis was literally about NFT and the Metaverse, NFTs and the Metaverse, right? It was literally the topic. And part of the research was that in that thesis, more or less predicted quite a bump for metaverses because there need to be key technologies being developed, right? But if you look at the actual volumes when it comes to AR, VR, right? They were back then super low. They're yet super low.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they never peaked, really. There was an interest in media, like it is very often, but it never peaked in monetary volumes. So that means that this run is coming. So, and then we have a divergence. At some point we have with the different technologies crossing roads. Yeah, we're gonna have on one hand, the technology to make the different types of metaverses possible. Yeah, the simplest is a 2D screen, up to AR, super sophisticated AR, thin glasses, whatever. However you want to access the metaverse, right, in a meaningful way, and AI, and there we're coming from blockchain, and blockchain, and when these four like literally cross, that's the point, and that's my strong belief. That's part of the of my thesis, right? Then we're on, and on here literally means full adoption. I mean, like we're using our phones, right? Our smartphones right now. So, and we're closer, I believe, than we're thinking, but further away than we're hoping. So there, in my opinion, there's still time, but it's not too far into the future.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I mean, we have the same conclusion, and we have like supporting macro conditions supporting that outcome, that the metaverse is going to be as ubiquitous as a cell phone. And we have a lot of these institutions predicting a multi-trillion-dollar ecosystem that, eventually is going to compete with the GDPs of countries. And to us, it makes a lot of sense. But many people don't really see that yet. So the challenge is like, what are the marginal steps that we can take forward today that will get us to that point in the future? And like, you're right. You've identified several pieces of technology that may not necessarily exist today. There are some technologies that do exist today, but this is still a developing sector that needs a lot of conviction and a lot of support from like all kinds of developers such as yourself. But it's interesting that
now we know why Pipe and Pipe AI, right, is coming. That's
talk to me about Pipe AI. We really don't. We haven't really talked about it like behind the closed doors, just because it's just there's too many other things to talk about. But definitely give us your pitch on Pipe AI.
Pipe AI, the Pipe AI pitch is basically democratizing AI in the spirit of Bitcoin. Yeah, of course, doesn't mean that there will be like large language models, sitting on Bitcoin. But we're going to leverage Bitcoin in a meaningful way to utilize AI. Yeah. So how that precisely will look like is that not precisely, but how this looks like is that you can literally or will be able to run very specialized smaller models with Bitcoin, for Bitcoin, on Bitcoin. And use the TRAC network to basically put these together. So the idea is then basically to have something like a content management system for models. Yeah. So and the democratizing factor of that is that you cannot move certain aspects of the chain anymore, right? When it comes to this part. If you have if you figure the cool model, that does something that's a special that somehow enhances another model, for example, you can do it with that, and nobody can take that away from you. While there are so many different licenses in the model landscape right now, you don't even know anymore which you may use, right? Combined together, right? You don't know actually what they are doing, partially. And this is part of that is what this is supposed to be solved. It's not going to be like a full, AI AI model system in the sense of that there are large models running on Bitcoin wouldn't be possible. There's not enough space for that, right? But it's a supportive thing. And this is targeted then at actual projects, that seek to some democratization, of AI, within Bitcoin. Relatively soon, we will know how that really in detail looks like. Well, I can't really say that here, right? Of course, we will know what happens then, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a little bit broad on that. But long story short, that's one of the tools that I would personally like to leverage when these things start to cross.
Yeah,
I mean, then we have Metaverse aspect on top of that, right? And then it's good, and it's also good that we didn't reach that point in time yet. We still have enough time to prepare the infrastructure for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's AI is an example tool that is one of the things that needs to be developed for the metaverse, and you're right. That's going to be like one of the more important things that help facilitate the construction of the metaverse, because we know that there isn't one single institution that can build out an entire metaverse, just because it's too complex, it is too expensive, and AI really helps with those two things, and so we need that. So as soon as you're ready for that tool, I think that's something else that we're going to leverage, along with other tools that you've been developing, like account abstraction, and then obviously ICP smart contracts to facilitate the programmability of these assets as well. So these are all these tools that we're ready to use as soon as it's ready, right? So yeah, I mean, happy to see that you're also kind of like looking into kind of the AI side of things, because that's a lot of my free time is spent doing that, just to not get behind.
Yeah. And when you say democratization of AI, are you directly at addressing the ethos of the concern of centralized runaway AI? Is this like a contributor towards like a solution against that?
Basically, the community decides what models get the pitch, what model wins the pitch, right? So then you have different aspects like for example, in the European Union, we have 800 pages long regulation book, you can say, that our compliance officer is still reading through, right? Wow. And that hinders a few things. It's literally made for huge big companies, right? And in my opinion, this stuff needs to be not just decentralized but communitized, if you know what I mean, right? So because when this all kicks in, all these innovative little businesses or innovative people, they will all rely on a handful of big companies that they can afford to fulfill all these regulations. And then we are just all users. We're not creators anymore. We're users. Do you want to be a user? You want to be used? No, I don't think so, right?
Not anymore. So, we've been used for the last 25 years.
Yeah. This is like the I know what this 5-year barrier, right? That everyone's talking about, right? But the point is here, if we let that happen, we're all going to be degraded to users, literally. Yeah. And personally, I don't want that to happen. I want to contribute to that with an idea. Yeah, maybe somebody else has a better idea, but I believe an open source content management system that ideally works decentralized to combine AI models is probably a tool that's very helpful.
Yeah, speaking of contribution, I mean, that's how we like to look at things as well, because we want to contribute where we can and do the best that we can. And there was a conversation happening on Twitter that was revolving around collections and marketplaces. And I sort of like unintentionally, kind of subconsciously with child authorization, we sort of solved that problem in the sense where you can produce children assets that are part of a larger collection from the parent. And from our perspective, we were like, this is an easier tool for anyone who wants to parcel out their bitmap. But from like if you zoom out a little bit, this is also a very useful tool if someone wants to create a collection of art that is associated to a parent. So yeah, give us your take on that conversation, and even if you were aware that that conversation happened, this happened like maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
Just surface level. I believe that goes in the direction of let me try to rephrase. It's really nice that we have with Ordinals this parent-child system, yeah. But it's a multi-parent tree, right? And people, when they think about collections, and that's actually what a collection, even mathematical, is. It's literally linear assortion of items. Yeah, there is no, like there's no basement to things, right? It's literally like goes from left to right, right to left, no up, no down. You know what I mean, right? It's not a tree. And yes, you can do things like you can burn the topmost parent, yeah, and to signal basically that's it. You cannot create any further children, but you can still, the owner of a child of that burned parent can still create as many children as they want. That's cool if you want to address genealogy kind of trees, right? So this kind of thing, is really emerged from that. But in my opinion, that's not what the majority of people want. Yeah. They want to be sure that whatever collection they have cannot be tampered with.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where child auth comes into play. So that is what it solves. It's really cool to have all this complexity, right? And then there's another aspect. It's really cool to have that kind of complexity, but it's really like the maximum you can do, and you don't always want to do the maximum. The average case is usually what people want to do, right? So, and they want to have a little bit less, and on top of that comes that it's very expensive, yeah, to create collections of that kind with ordinals. While if you have a child auth system, there is room for improvement when it comes to the costs. Yeah, you can give the child, instead of the actual item that has value, right? You give that child auth to some inscriber, and on that child authorization, all that is basically inscribed into. So you're not giving up the custody of things, right? Because if that gets lost somehow, into the inscriber, which can happen, then it will become very expensive. Yeah. And for example, if you want to have people just mint from your collection, right? It's not possible, right? Without giving up the custody over your parent, right?
Correct.
So what you end up with is you're minting it yourself, right? Which is extremely costly. And now imagine we're like in an absolute bull, right? There's not many people who can afford that, right? And then we have like stuff like, okay, whoever has the most money controls what's happening. That's also not what we want, right?
That's right.
So this is this kind of stuff that child auth solves, and that's why I'm pretty bullish on that, to have that supported too. To help mitigate that.
So just to be clear, you said to have that supported. So what we did, for those of you who are kind of catching up to what's happening with DMT and specifically the Matrix, is we co-developed this concept of a child authorization inscription that comes as a child to a bitmap, and we send that child to a platform like mscribe, and that mscribe platform uses that JSON or that child authorization to produce children parcels from it. And what this does is it makes it extremely cost effective for the bitmap owner to have the community mint their parcels instead of the bitmap owner mint the parcels to themselves and then distribute it, as an airdrop, because airdrops are very expensive on Bitcoin. inscribing, 3,000, 2,000 assets to yourselves is very expensive on Bitcoin. So might as well develop technology that allows people to click on a parcel, mint that to themselves, and that's a child from the authorization contract. And so what Benny is talking about in terms of support is that you will create an API endpoint to verify which parcels are valid, because let's say a bitmap has 2,000 parcels. What's to stop anyone to produce 2,100 parcels? And so the API is there to show you that anything beyond this non-arbitrary count of parcels is not valid. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's the support I'm talking about. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, some could argue, but then, I don't know, you need an indexer for that. You always need an indexer. You know what? Bitcoin is the Bitcoin nodes. They're indexers.
That's right.
Yeah, big news. The alt client is an indexer, right? Yeah, right. It's funny that people think you don't need an indexer, right? Everything is indexed. The whole life is indexed, right? So in the end, it's about that people know what's legitimate and what's not. They don't care how it came to be, as long as it's trustworthy.
Exactly.
And that's what we're working on.
Do you have any, speaking of people not liking indexers, have you any stance on like the cat, OP cat?
Yeah.
I think like Cat 20's over there on Fractal claiming that, like we've solved,
good question.
We've solved everything, right? It's like we don't need index server alliances anymore.
Yeah. Of course, they don't need an indexer. They just call it tracker. Right. If you look at the GitHub repo, it's called tracker. Yeah. So they're right. You don't need an indexer. You need a tracker. Yeah. Cool. But no, seriously. I personally start to understand why certain Bitcoin maxis really are not fond of the idea of opcat, and that is. Maybe I understood it wrong, but when you can basically decide what's supposed to happen in the future, in who knows how many transactions, right? I get a really bad feeling how this would turn out. Yeah. So in terms of predictability, at least in terms of that users aren't able to trace all the way back to the rules that were applied, from which these assets came from. I will look into this further, but I believe there are good reasons why this has been disabled, not just because of the recursive costs that could emerge in earlier versions of Bitcoin. But also of unwanted side effects, that could emerge, right? Yeah. And I start to, at least surface level, to agree with certain things that how Bitcoin maxis see that. I'm not a Bitcoin maxi, but they are not fully wrong, right? Before this is going like ever on mainnet, there need to be like really like if not months, maybe even years, testing down the road how that actually develops. So in that sense, what's happening with Cat 20, for example, is a good test field. So you can see then over time how this is working out. Then you can extrapolate that then for Bitcoin probably. And if it turns out not to be an issue, then fine. If it turns out to be an issue, then probably not fine. But I wouldn't really rush it out right now. Even if it's like hard because it's a narrative and everybody wants that, I can understand that. But I would be really, really careful with that.
Yeah. Didn't Satoshi have OPCAT enabled in the early days of Bitcoin?
Yeah. It was enabled. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he deactivated it with an update to the core, the Bitcoin core. So yeah, I mean, there's probably a good reason why he deactivated it, but it's probably better to not, put the cart before the horse in terms of Bitcoin, because we're dealing with like a valuable asset here, and disrupting it could be costly.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, what are the trade-offs as far as like actually implementing it, and what can be done already with existing, protocols like TAP or what anybody else is working on, right? To bring in all the core desires.
What does OPCAT enable that can't already be done with like this existing technology?
Right. Yeah. And does that outweigh the potential risks to Bitcoin itself? Because if that is a disruptive force at all, and if to any degree, it's not worth doing.
It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Benny. We got a few more minutes left. I guess final thoughts. What is, I guess, the next thing to look forward to for the TAP ecosystem, and what do you have coming up next that you can talk about?
That's one of the next things is like all these products. I mentioned it before. Let's call it the stables bridge into the TAP protocol. Will also include like well-known meme tokens, of course, right? But the focus is on stables there, including wrapped ETH. Yeah, just as an example. The wallet will be released soon, and a whole bunch of other things like staking. For example, we didn't talk about that. Taparu swap, or the swap in general, has LP tokens. Yeah.
Yes.
And we're also exploring ideas there on how to utilize the LP tokens other than removing liquidity, right? Because these LP tokens are actual ordinals, right?
Yeah.
There are also products around that. And we're also moving or not moving, but we're shifting a lot of our focus with new staff, with the new staff that we have onto the TRAC network itself. Yeah, aside from TAP. Yeah. Speaking of validators, yeah, and I don't know if you heard about that, but after the transition from TRAC into the TAP protocol, we will be working on making it will take a while, right? But we need to start at some point to prepare people for that. Will become a network asset, similar to Bitcoin, Ethereum. Yeah, so we'll make the transition to the network asset of TRAC network.
Mm-hmm.
And I repeat, TRAC network is not a chain; it's a completely new breed, yeah, of crypto.
Yeah.
And that will be the network asset of that, right? So that's one of the bigger things, if not a really big thing, that's coming. And of course, Pipe AI, right? The development for Pipe AI stopped literally like a couple of months ago to now, simply because of time constraints. We'll re-pick that up, and happy to have Yusuf with us in our team. He was actually the very first implementer of a UTXO based token ever, right? So he knows his stuff, right? And we're working very closely together then on Pipe AI. We also need to expand the protocol itself, the Pipe protocol, also Pipeline, that project, you probably know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also working with them. They're giving good insights from the community because they're still at the forefront of things, right? They're holding out literally through all this locomotion that's happening. They're holding out, like, okay, they're waiting, yeah, for Pipe, right? And very soon there's time for that. So yeah, we're branching out, of course, yeah, because it's a literal network, and give basically each the same treatment that we gave so far and we'll give into the future for the TAP protocol, right? So with a growing team, we were finally able to achieve that. That's the good news behind that, actually.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear, man. You've been putting a lot of work into this since the drop. I mean, you were early into Ordinals, and you've been kind of building since then.
Yeah, it's crazy we've said it before, like, we're definitely cheerleaders at this point, because just for the fact that the same reason we were like rooting for like Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Right. Just to be able to witness like something like that, somebody who was like, the underdog of his world.
Yeah.
Turn out to be like one of the greatest athletes of all time. Right.
That's right.
We literally saw the very spawning point. You were just like a solo dev in Discord. Nobody knew who you were, your background was, but you had these ambitions. Right. And that resonated with us significantly. Right. That's why we followed your pathway this entire time. And yeah, you've done so much in what, like a year and a half to about 2 years. So it's crazy to witness. Yeah, we want to be able to like, because we've seen a lot of these things happen in the past, right? We were early witnessing like the Axie Infinity team build out their project, turned into like a massive behemoth. Yeah. Obviously, we're early in the metaverse, seeing Decentraland first get things online. So we have a little bit of a track record of like seeing these
substance value,
seeing these little diamonds in the rough, right? Yeah. And then in the moment, you can't really see how it's all going to come about, but it usually always does at some point, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, you don't deserve. I mean, you don't get enough credit that you deserve for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Benny. Well, we can't give you any more flowers than we just gave you right now. So again.
Yeah. Now it's time for me to give flowers. Thank you a lot for standing with us. With me also, personal. You know, right? We talked about that in private. It was not easy for me too, right? On the private side, and thanks a lot, for all the support, and I can speak for the community. There was never any doubt that came from your end, whatever happened, and that's rare in crypto. You know it yourselves, right? So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if anybody's gonna say anything about us, is like we had conviction in pretty much everything that we talk about.
Yeah, that comes from our, I guess, experience of like we could point out the bullshit like pretty easy these days.
Yeah.
And we knew you weren't the bullshitter out there.
Yeah, right? That's right.
So the conviction was pretty easy.
All right, Benny. I know that you're super busy, so I want to thank you again for your time. Everyone else, all the links will be in the description. What is DMT? What is tap? What is pipe? All that stuff will be in there. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next podcast.
Peace.